Jeff Gehring is the president and co-owner of Complex Fabrication Machine, which services the military, commercial, aerospace, electronics, medical, and recreation industries. He is also the co-founder and owner of Rise, a live music and lantern festival, which creates a unique environment, allowing attendees to experience an evening that lifts and elevates their personal hopes, dreams, resolutions, goals, and desires. So welcome, Jeff. Welcome to our little leadership webinar series today. We're super glad to have you. Thank you for taking the time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So one thing we just want to hear all about you and your entrepreneur journey, your education journey, kind of starting from, I guess, right after high school. And we just want to hear all up until now. So in My Tech High, we do have so many people that are in high school, that are graduating high school and trying to kind of figure out what they want to do out of high school. And so for you, what was your post-secondary education experience like? I know a lot of people go to university. I know a lot of people just jump right into jobs. What was it like for you?
So I I did a year at UVSC, which was actually probably a really good transition for me. I had a lot of fun in high school, which was good. I mean, I studied hard. And my motto's always kind of been, work hard, play hard. There's no point in working hard if you're not going to play hard, right? So when I decided to move on to college, I did a year at UVSC and then took a 2-year hiatus to do a church service mission, which was really cool. And that was a very good experience for me. Also taught me a lot about commitment and dedication and how to just work hard as well. And then when I got back, I enrolled at Brigham Young University. And like a lot of students, I just thought I love business. And so I'm going to study business. And then when I got into the business program, I felt like I was just one of a million people where I'm like, oh man, I'm just in this rat race to get this degree in business. And this isn't really who I am or what I want to do. And everyone is studying business. What does that even mean? And so back in those days, there was this book at BYU that had all of the majors in it. It looked like a phone book, it was like this thick and you thumb through it and look at all the majors. And I remember sitting at my kitchen table at my parents' house and I stumbled upon the major of communications. And in communications, there were a few disciplines. And when I got to public relations, I thought, as I'm reading about crisis management and strategic planning, I thought, this is what I want. I gravitate towards this, and realized that there was a good application to this public relations program to all facets of business. So I pivoted and switched to that program, to public relations, and really, really enjoyed that. And then when I graduated, I at the time when I was going to school, I was a real estate agent. I actually had a friend approach me and say, hey, what are you going to do for work while you're going to college? And I said, well, I'm not sure yet. I got to find a job. He said, I have a friend who's a business or a developer and a builder, and he needs someone to get a real estate license and sell this project up in Midway. I said, I don't know if I'm cut out for real estate. And he said, well, you're just really good with people. You'd be good at sales. He said, the builder will pay for you to go get your real estate license and then your commission only after that. And I thought, you know what? I remember reading something that Larry Miller said, where he said, you just got to swing for the fences sometimes and go for things that, something like, when you're younger, it's easier to swing for the fences and go for the grand slams, And so I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a whirl. And worst case, I'm out nothing. They're paying for it. So I went and got my real estate license, and I was doing real estate, which is a great way to get through college at the time. And then right at the time I was about to graduate, I reached out to a friend from Ecuador, where I served my church service mission. And I had promised him in Ecuador that I would teach him how to water ski. So I called him to teach him how to water ski. And he said, Jeff, I'm so busy with work right now. I just can't break away to go to the lake. And I'm like, come on, man. Anyway, so he finally came to the lake, but he said, hey, we need to hire someone at this company where I'm working at that speaks Spanish and that can help do sales in Latin America and Miami. I said, cool, let me come check it out, because real estate was kind of on a little bit of a downturn. So I went and I got hired as a salesman to work for this company called Wencor, which was a parts distribution company for mostly commercial aerospace. And then while I was working for them, they approached me and said, hey, we'd like you to go get your master's. And they said, we want you to go to BYU. And I said yes to getting my master's. And I said no to getting it at BYU, only because I wanted this diversity of education. And they said, well, if you want to go somewhere else, that's fine, but you'll have to pay the difference. And I said, hey, with lots of appreciation, I'm not really interested. Like I know where I want to go do my master's degree. I want to go to Thunderbird. And the reason I wanted to go to Thunderbird is because I have this real appreciation for international business, and just felt like at the time, everything's becoming more global and flat. There is no matter where you're doing business, there's this global supply chain now, and everything's it's global. And anyway, they finally came around, and so I went and did my master's degree at Thunderbird in Arizona, which was an amazing experience. And for me, the great part, I mean, everybody does it their own way. For me, what worked really well was doing a master's while I was working, an executive style MBA program, because I was able to, I'm more of a hands-on learner. So I needed to actually go to school and then immediately apply those principles in what I was doing for work and see this application. Other people do really well just kind of studying and then going to work, but I'm not that kind of a person. So I needed the kind of hands-on real life application immediately. So that was kind of my education journey.
That is an awesome education journey. I love that it took you in lots of different routes, and you kind of figured out what you liked. And at the beginning, you liked one thing, and then you realized, oh, maybe not. And so you just kind of switched to something else. And I think that's a good principle. Like, you can just switch to learning something else, or you can continue learning what you like. And it doesn't really matter. In the end, you'll end up doing what you like anyway.
It's to use a basketball term, it's just pivoting, right? When you pivot, if you got to plant a foot, doesn't mean you're going to completely shift everything you're doing, but you're shifting directions, right? And so a lot of times we have this roadmap for, what we decided when we were kids, I'm going to be an attorney or a doctor or whatever, right? But as you said, things don't always go the way you planned. And so it doesn't mean you scrap the entire plan, but you pivot. And business is a lot like that. Anyone who's been in business knows that you pivot more times than you don't, right? So that happened in my education as well.
That's really cool. So you took you were working in that what was the name?
Wencor was the name of the business.
Wencor.
Yep.
Perfect. So they were subsidizing at least some of that MBA degree costs, which is an awesome way to go. So you were working for someone, but what led you to become an entrepreneur? What brought you out of the shell that I don't want to work for someone, I want to go to work for myself and create something myself?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting. I had a couple of really small ventures. When I was in college at BYU, we had a little company called Sungrove Web, me and a couple of students, where we built web pages, right back in the day when people were just building HTML websites. So I always had this affinity for having my own business. But the first thing that I launched on my own was a running events business called Run 13, which was the Provo City Half Marathon and Hollow Creek Half Marathon in Springville as well, and a few other running events. And that was kind of born out of feeling like I could do it better than somebody else. And what happened was I was sitting on the Citizens Advisory Board for an organization in Utah County called Wasatch Mental Health, which is, they help people all over the valley with mental health challenges. And I was on their Citizens Advisory Board, and they wanted to do a 5K fun run as a fundraiser. And I was chairing this fundraiser. And there were all these people on the board that wanted to do this. All they had seen was a traditional 5K that was, you run this race, you get a crappy cotton t-shirt. And when you get to the finish line, you get a bagel and some fruit, and then you go home. And it's the most anticlimactic experience ever. And we said, hey, me and one of my friends who was also on this advisory board with me, said, hey, let's do something different. Let's challenge the norm here and make this a very family-friendly, fun event. Let's just do something completely different, scrap the current playbook. And we were dealing with a lot of people that were, baby boomers, older people on the board that did not want to do anything different than what they knew, what felt safe right inside of the swim lane. And I said, I'm not talking about jumping out of the pool into a whole different pool or into the ocean, but let's move a few lanes over, right? And they just couldn't get their heads around it. And so literally one day at lunch, I said, you know what, Denny, let's start our own race. He's like, what? Actually, we were sitting at a BYU football game. That's where we were. So we should start our own running event and do it the way we want to do it. Because I'm like, I feel really good about we could do this and do really well. So that was in the fall. And then we said, okay, let's do it. So we went and met with the mayor of Provo City. And it was kind of funny. I mean, this is one of the first learnings of launching a business is you just have to be brave. You just have to be willing to just be brave. And I always tell my kids, and it's kind of like what Michael Jordan said, you miss every shot you don't take. And I tell my kids, you'll never get what you don't ask for. I mean, you got to be willing to make the ask, and you might get a no, but you'll be surprised how many times you get a yes if you just ask, because people like people who are willing to take risks. And so we called down to Provo City Mayor's office and said, hey, we want to start a running event that we grew up in this area. We want to showcase Provo City, and we want it to be the Provo City Half Marathon. And the mayor said, I love that idea. And okay, well, let's partner up and figure it out. And he introduced us to a few potential sponsors. We got Zions Bank on board as our first sponsor. And I remember sitting in the meeting with Zions Bank. The mayor set up the meeting, and then I wasn't expecting to get very far in the meeting. And they kind of caught me by surprise and said, well, okay, you want us to be the title sponsor of this event? How much money do you want? And we're like, we kind of look at each other and we're like, 15,000 sounds good. And they're like, okay, sounds good. Yeah. Who do we make out the check to? And then we were off and running, so that was the first one.
That is so crazy. That's great. Like I love what you said. You just got to be brave. You've got to take those first steps. And sometimes, though you don't know what first steps to take, what maybe advice would you give on a brand new entrepreneur, someone in your shoes? What would you have told them, or some of these MyTech High students who maybe are excited to take the first step, but they don't quite know how to decide what the first step is? Like, how did you know what the first step to take was?
Well, a couple things. There's lots of good things, nuggets in there. One is simply trial and error, right? So when you feel paralyzed about not knowing what to do, the best advice is just do something. Just do something. Chase your dreams and figure it out. Just literally get up and do something, whatever you think. And usually your instincts are pretty good. The other one is there are so many resources out there of people that you can reach out to and talk to. Just talk to people, right? Ask questions, be inquisitive, and people are willing to help. I had a lot of people who gave me a hand up as we went through this endeavor, and there's lots of people that are willing to mentor. But I think it's literally just go after it. You just got to move and just do something.
Yeah, you certainly do. And then I think, and I've seen that from my family, from my dad, who's an entrepreneur as well, as you well know. He just goes out and does stuff. And then it's like, because you just kind of, he loves the phrase, fake it till you make it. Where really a lot of people don't really know what they're doing. They just kind of go and try something.
None of us do.
Probably will work out, as you've seen, like for yourself, like it just works out. And it's kind of crazy to see how it does.
Well, and if it doesn't, the other thing that I've always said is, if you're going to fail fast. You want to get to the no quickly. And so I've always felt like, hey, we're going to go for this. And if we fail, we're going to fail quick, and then it's on to the next thing, and certainly I've had things that haven't gone as well as we hoped, and whether you pivot or whatever, but yeah, you just go for it.
That's perfect. And so that was your first business then, this half marathon in Provo?
Yeah. So it was the business that we actually launched was called Run 13. And we ended up doing a series of 6 running events all over Utah County that were anything from marathons to 5Ks. And I've since sold out of that business and took an exit from that business, but it's still a viable business today, and they're still running the events, and kind of got through COVID. Events are a little bit fickle in the COVID era, but now people are starting to get back together and congregate. And in fact, the first event, Provo City Half Marathon, is always kind of the first running event in Utah County. It's in May, and then I think the Hobbler Half Marathon is actually, it's probably tomorrow. Actually, it's always the second Saturday in July, so it's probably tomorrow. So yeah, anyway, still an ongoing running series in the Valley.
That's really cool. It's cool to see that even after you exited that company, it still keeps going. It still fulfills the goals that you had at the beginning. And so that is a very entrepreneur thing to do, is to kind of build up a business and sell it and move on. So what were some of the things you moved on to?
So, that business kind of got to a point where I would say it was kind of on cruise control, right? We had a loyal following of runners and a good customer base. And we expanded it to a series of 6 races, and then realized, what, some of these smaller races are not the most profitable ones. And we ended up canceling a few of those, and the business was more profitable by having fewer races than more. And so that was a good lesson too. And then in the midst of that, a couple of friends had seen a Sky Lantern event out in Thailand, and it was just this magical experience. And I wasn't there the first time that my friends went and experienced this. They had seen this kind of release of Sky Lanterns, but it was, at the time in Thailand, it was a very kind of a Buddhist, you go listen to these monks kind of chant. And as we sat down and talked about it, and they said, hey, we want to find a way to bring this to the States. And we talked about it, said, yeah, let's do this, but it can't be, we have to Westernize it a little bit and change the culture so it will work in the States. And we needed a big footprint of land to do this. And this was kind of just in the ideation phase of figuring out where to do this. And we started reaching out and looking at possibilities of where we could do this. And we decided that the best place to do this was in Las Vegas, because it was the best piece of land and it was government owned BLM land. And, you know, sometimes things seem weird, right? So we're looking at doing this Sky Lantern and Music Festival that is somewhat spiritual, although non-religious, but a spiritual feeling and this very energetic thing. And I remember one of the business partners saying, well, to do this in Sin City doesn't feel right. And then one of the other partners said, actually, it feels amazing because we're bringing something, you know, uplifting and great into Vegas. And it turns out that there's a visitor and convention bureau in Vegas, and we took the idea to them. They said, we love this idea because it's completely unique, something that we've never seen in the city of Las Vegas, and we would love to find a way to help you guys make it work. And so we had this idea, and it took us significant investment and time to get the permits. We were the first company to ever bring a Sky Lantern event organized to the US. And so there were a million challenges and hurdles that we had to go through from approvals. And it was daunting, honestly. When we started to go down this path, it felt like every time we got through one hurdle, then it was like, well, have you talked to, so at first it was getting a permit from the landowner, which was BLM. And then it was like, okay, well, have you talked to Highway Patrol? No, we'll talk to them. Okay, what about Metro Police? Okay, what about Clark County Fire? Okay, what about Union Pacific Railroad? Okay, what about the FAA? And it was just one hurdle after another. And we just kept kind of knocking them down systematically. And it's kind of like knocking pool balls in one at a time, you know, and we're like, okay, what's the next shot? And they didn't always go in the first try. We'd have to go back, and we ended up writing about a 100-page brief that we submitted and finally got approval, and at significant cost, because you have to pay for, you know, to do all this work. And we got preliminary approval. They didn't even say you have a permit, but they said you have tacit approval. And we said, okay, so we can turn tickets on. And they said yes. And so we had started doing all this promoting on social media. And so at this point, we're about $150,000 into getting the permit of, you know, all of those costs, and about 50 to 60,000 in Facebook promotions and advertising. And now we finally get to turn tickets on sale, you know. It's sort of like, let's see how this goes, you know. And it was amazing. We announced that we were going to sell 3,000 tickets. The day we turned tickets on sale, we sold all the tickets. Wow. And we had a limit of 10,000. Yeah, we had a limit of 10,000 people for year one, and we sold out. So we were all excited, right? And events are a unique business in that every other business, you have timelines and deadlines, but as you approach those timelines and deadlines, you may have some snags. And so hey, we're gonna push this date back. How are we feeling about this date? Well, with events, you can't do that. Once you've announced and sold tickets that this is the day it's happening, that is the day it's happening, and you got to move forward. It's just the time is ticking through the hourglass, right? The sand. So we have the event, and the event itself is amazing. And then we had some logistical issues of getting people away from the event. Everyone had to be bussed in. They wouldn't allow us to park cars down at the venue. And so you had to take a bus from the city out to the event. And it was about a 45-minute bus ride. Well, bus drivers only have a certain time limit that commercial bus drivers that they can drive, and then they time out, and then they can't take passengers anymore. So we had 10,000 people out in the desert, and the exit was going okay. And then we didn't know that the bus company that we had hired had brought in some bus drivers from California. Due to the drive time from California, they timed out at about 10 o'clock at night. So while we had planned on enough buses to get everyone in and out in one run, we had bus drivers leaving the venue empty. And it turned into this sort of mob mentality because people were like, felt like they were going to get stranded in the desert. So we had all this negative publicity, and people literally said, hey, you gave us this event that was like heaven, and then you gave us hell. And we're like, oh my gosh, we did what we wanted to do, but then we also gave them exactly the opposite. And so, but we clawed our way out of it, did a lot of PR. You know, we had 10,000 people, and I got the lucky straw saying, hey, you have a PR degree, so you get to go on air with the, TV and radio stations and talk through this thing, these issues. And then we actually made personal phone calls. We talked to some of the most disgruntled and upset fans or people that had come to the event, and just kind of worked our way through it. And then the next year we felt good about things. We expanded to 15,000 people. And then the next year we went to 2 nights, Friday and Saturday night, 10,000 people, and we continued to sell out. And so, that's what we're doing. We got a 2-night event in Vegas where we bring out about 30,000 people once a year and do a really fun, and it's a really fun business. It's a really cool business.
Yeah, that is really cool. And there's a lot to go on. A lot of people don't realize all the things that go in to one event or even to one
Right.
business. People think, oh, I'm in the tech world, I'm just a coder. But no, there's supply chain, there's marketing, there's everything in every kind of
Yeah.
business, events and otherwise.
hmm
And that's really cool. And that that's Rise, right? That's one of your big ones that you're doing. Are you still involved in all of that? Still
Yep. Yep.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's super awesome to see. And then um what other current ones? Do you have any other current ones that you're still doing? Because that's only once a year, but of course you have like year-long things to do because there's a whole tons of stuff to plan for each year. But um does that take up all your time, or do you have other time to do other entrepreneurial pursuits, or what other
Yeah.
things?
Good question. So right before COVID was hitting, we were on this international expansion journey with Rise, where we had a lot of really fun things were happening. And, an event takes you a few years to actually kind of nail it before you then scale it. Right. So we'd finally gotten through, 5 years of doing this event. We said, okay, it's time for us to scale this event, this business, and take it international now. Because, we'd only done it 5 times, so now we're like, okay, we needed 5 times to figure it out. So we started the international expansion model, and we were ready to launch in Australia, Dubai, and Colombia. We had basically permits and approvals to do it in all of these locations. And it was really fun. I mean, like the event, getting approval in Dubai is like kind of the wild, wild west. So that was like, getting approval from the Sheikh Mohammed, and saying, yeah, you can use this land and you can do this. And in Australia was a little bit different, and Colombia was a little bit different, but we got the approvals and we're ready to launch these events. And then COVID hit, And so when COVID hit, we said, okay, well, this business kind of, unfortunately, this business goes on hold for a year until we kind of come out of COVID. There were things that we had to do to still run the business and maintain it, but it was a bit on cruise control and on hold. So at that time I said, well, what am I going to do? I need to pivot and do some other things too. I had then sold the marathon business. I have another event business in Texas that is also a half marathon business, but it's small. And then Rise. And so then I thought, well, maybe I had a few other ideas for other businesses to launch. And right at that time, this is where networking is obviously really important in business, right? So I took a few months, and I'm a big believer in vacation and taking time off to recharge and decide what you want to do, take some time for reflection. And so when we decided to postpone Rise due to COVID in 2020, I took a step back just to reflect and say, well, where am I and what do I want to do and what are my long-term goals? And I thought about going back for another degree, maybe go to law school or something. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I just had a lot of ideas, and started talking to people, saying, hey, this is my current situation. And I had a few mentors that I would consider really close mentors over the course of my career. And I called one of them, who was a boss of mine when I was back at Wencor, this parts distribution facility. And I knew he had purchased another company. And I told him kind of what I was thinking and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And he said, well, let's go to lunch. So we went to lunch, and he said, hey, Jeff, I want to retire, and let's figure out a strategy where you just take over this business and some ownership into this business so that I can retire soon. I still want to be involved, but I don't want to be running it day to day. So that's what I moved in. That's when I moved into, in the introduction, you mentioned complex fabricators and machine, and I moved into that business. And so, and that was kind of fun because it's different than Rise, but it was a return to what I had done in the early stages of my career, for probably a dozen years in that aerospace and defense world before I left to do Rise full time. So I kind of got to return to that, but in a different role, and really help grow this business. So now we're just trying to grow that business and move into different sectors. So the business has been primarily an aerospace and defense contract facility, making parts for those applications. And as you mentioned, now we're moving into some recreation, industrial, looking at other opportunities, still staying within the core business of making parts out of metal, but looking at where else we can use those skills and assets. It's a very asset heavy business. So what I mean by that, if you look at Rise, for example, the only assets that we really own for that business, it's a very asset light business. We had to buy these tiki torches and a few things to set up our venue, but most of the stuff that we use for Rise, we rent. It's a very expensive load-in budget. Like you said, people people don't really understand all that goes into putting on an event, but we set up a small city, right? Our venue is basically 3 football fields that we set up with, food villages, restrooms. We dig trenches and put power in the ground for the week that we're there. I mean, it's a whole build, but you rent everything. So there's not a lot of capital required for that. Whereas for a machine shop, we just purchased a new machine about a year ago, and that machine cost us $1.2 million for the machine, right? So it's a capital intensive business. So when you have those machines, you just want to keep those machines running nonstop. So if there's not aerospace and defense work, then you say, okay, we gotta be making parts for other industries to keep these machines busy, because you're paying for the machine whether it's sitting idle or not, right? So, but that's the latest endeavor, and that's been really fun too. I kind of just believe, a widget is a widget, whether you're selling a ticket to a music festival or you're selling a part that goes on a landing gear for an airplane. It's business is fun, and there's lots of ways to make it fun. And at the end of the day, it's about the culture that you create so that people want to be part of something. They want to be part of the journey that you're on, and that really boils down to the people that you work with. And I tell my kids all the time, be selective with what you do for work, because you're going to spend more time with coworkers and colleagues than you will with your own family. And especially if you're an entrepreneur, there are late nights and early mornings, and you got to find the right balance, but you also have to surround yourself with really good people to get there. And I remember during my master's program, another mentor that I had named Fran, and she taught me that. She said, hey, I don't ever aim to be the smartest person in the room. I want to surround myself with people that are much smarter than me. And man, I don't ever have a problem doing that. I'm always able to surround myself with people that are much smarter than me. And they help me get places. So it's good.
I think that is really good advice to anyone that's starting to look at building their own business or just what they want to do in life, is just surround yourself with good people. Because like
Yeah.
you said, I've heard that, and this has been the case in my life as well, that jobs have been really good when I've enjoyed the people I've worked with. Even if the job itself isn't the most fun thing, still business is business, business is fun, but it's
Yeah.
really enjoyable when you're with people you really like.
Yep. You can make the journey great if you're surrounded by good people, even if there's, and every business goes through peaks and valleys. Sometimes we think, well, that business has been around for so long, they must just have, a great run. I mean, I promise you, all businesses have their ups and downs, and, even the most successful businesses that have great IPOs, there were moments before they got there where they were trying to raise money and ideate and get off the ground. And it's tricky and it's challenging businesses. But I think at the end of the day, like you said, you surround yourself with good people, and it's all about execution. And I think, through this entrepreneurship group that I'm in, we had the opportunity to go do and help with an entrepreneurship class over at the high school. And it was really fun and rewarding to see these kids. They actually launch a business as part of this class. And there was a time we did it before COVID, and they were selling these beanies. They decided they wanted to sell these beanies at the school, hats or whatever. And they were just kind of, they were struggling to get sales. And I said, well, what are you guys doing to get sales? Tell me what you're actually doing, and at the end of the day, they weren't executing the plan. They had a great plan. And I say all the time, good ideas are a dime a dozen, but execution is where it matters. So the first sort of leadership role that I had when I got asked to step into a role as president of an aerospace company before I launched Rise, I remember feeling a little overwhelmed. I think I was I don't know, I was 28 or 29 years old, and the CEO came to me and said, hey, we let the president go and we want you to be the president of the company. And I was like, are you sure you got the right guy here today? And we talked about it. And then I remember flying out to Oklahoma City to meet with the leadership team. And I was talking to the CFO, who I'd become good friends with. And he said, well, how are you feeling? And I said, I'm honestly pretty overwhelmed and not sure that I'm up for this gig. And he said, I'll share with you a little secret that I learned a long time ago. And I said, what's that? And his name is Jeff Morton. And Jeff Morton said to me, he said, put your head down and work, and you'll be ahead of 90% of the people. If you just put your head down and grind, you'll get it, man. Like, most people just don't know how to work hard. And if you know how to work, you'll be ahead of most people. And I've for sure found that to be true. Like, being an entrepreneur takes significant work. And anyone who thinks they want to be an entrepreneur and is not up for real work and doesn't have grit and determination, do something else. But you're going to have to find grit and determination to get through those hard days of being an entrepreneur, because those days they will come, I promise you. But it is the most rewarding thing as well. Being an entrepreneur is just fascinating because it's just you're learning, you're teaching yourself as you go, and there's nothing like it.
Well, Jeff, I think that's fabulous advice. I think it's really important for these kids and for anyone out there to realize that it does take hard work, and you evidently have put in that work, and I love that. And I think that's also great advice. It's like, but if you're not that type of person, just find something else that fits you better. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
entrepreneurship isn't for everyone, just like, you know, ballet isn't for everyone or sports isn't for everyone. Like, but there is something for everyone, and that's just finding it themselves. And so,
Absolutely. And you know what? And if you're not sure, try it. Try it.
yeah.
And just put in the work, and then you might find you love being an entrepreneur. I didn't know when I was a kid that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just knew I loved business. Wasn't sure that what I would do, but and some people are really good at being intrapreneurs, right? Which, they bring up good ideas inside of a business, but they don't necessarily want to be the one that the buck stops with them, but they're good. But you can be an entrepreneur, you can be an intrapreneur inside of a business and bring really good ideas and change. So like you said, there's a spot for everyone. But you won't know until you try.
There certainly is. And so we are out of time here, Jeff. I super appreciate the time you've taken to share with your story, share your insights. They're completely invaluable. I absolutely love them. To finish, do you have any social media or Rise's social media or anything you'd like to share to encourage, just a shout out here at the end?
Yeah, I would just look up Rise Festival on Instagram. And in fact, I know we'll connect and I'll get you a code. So we'll get a code for those that watch this, a discount for the MyTech High students to come to the Rise Festival if they're interested. It's in Vegas, October 1st and 2nd. And we'll come up with a discount code for MyTech High students. Would love to have anyone who wants to come check it out, come be a part of it. It's a phenomenal experience.
That would be incredible. And that's very generous of you, Jeff. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate the time you've taken. I think this is going to help so many kids, so many people, and it's going to be awesome. So thank you so much, Jeff.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.